And then Chris Hughes from Rebound for another daily show on Upstreamedia. I'm joined by Chat Duru, who's tonight we don't say podcast. I'm sure a lot of you about that and the work he's really looking forward to talking to him about that. Welcome, Chat. Hope you're well.
Hi, Chris. Very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I say since we've last talked, you've gone on to do your own podcast. I've really enjoyed it. I think 10 episodes so far. Great guests. Obviously, I know you've been thinking about it for a while, but maybe just as an intro, break down what sort of inspired you to start doing the ISO podcast.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was something that I'd had in, the back of my mind for quite some time now. I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews in my spare time, and looking at the landscape of British basketball, there's not really, other than Sam at Hoopsfix, there's not really much one-to-one interviews in our community, in our scene. And also, I felt like, from my perspective, being player to player, you get a different dynamic of a conversation. So yeah, I initially wanted to actually do it as a YouTube show where, I bought the equipment and everything. I was actually planning to do one-to-one interviews in the summer. But obviously, given the coronavirus and whatnot, it made more sense to do an audio podcast. So yeah, I really, in sense of like why I wanted to do it, I wanted to give players a platform to sort of showcase their personality, tell their journey in quite a relaxed manner. You usually see interviews with basketball players in the media, and it's more very like PC, like generic sort of interview. And I wanted to get an interview that was a bit more personal, a bit more conversational, with insight, but ultimately entertaining to an extent as well. And I feel like I got that with my episodes this in the season 1.
Definitely, for sure. I've really enjoyed them. There's lots to break down. We'll talk a few about this evening. And you mentioned how other than maybe Sam Needs, there hasn't really been much out there. Obviously, now it's a bit more. Are there other people shows you listen to taking notes? Or for me, personally, of podcasts or shows, and definitely take some notes. There's things I like or things that I've changed. And I know you're about the news too. Are you going to deviate slightly from what you've been doing, or keep with formula? Because it obviously been quite a good formula so far.
Yeah, I mean, with my podcast, I didn't really look to any basketball podcasts for inspiration. Actually, in actual fact, a lot of my my blueprint came from a boxing podcast called Pound for Pound, which is done by Jake Wood. Some of you might know him as Max Brannan from EastEnders, and Spencer Oliver. So their format was obviously they have a conversation at the beginning, and they bring on a guest and have like an interview for about 40 minutes. So I wanted to not emulate, but sort of copy an aspect of their podcast, because I like the dynamic of having the someone on to tell their journey, but in quite an entertaining but insightful way. So to be honest, that was my inspiration for the podcast. But yeah, I've been listening to I listened to a lot of Sam Neater's from his early podcasts to his current ones. I know some of you might have seen me talk on the Baller's Voice channel. The recent episode I did with Tosin, Justin, and Ishmael about the roundtable that Sam did with the BBL owners. So I've definitely got my ear to what's happening in the community. So yeah.
Yeah, I say I watched the Roundtable and I watched yours. Both great shows. After that show, obviously, it sparked a lot of discussion. Hence, you guys coming on Ed having your own discussion with you and Baller's Voice and Ishmael. Was there anything that sort of spurred more insight for me? There was bits you guys mentioned I hadn't thought about from the Roundtable. Something different, but as that video, is anything else you thought about?
So you're breaking up a bit towards the end.
That's
Shall I
fine.
repeat that?
Yeah, of course. No, I say yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Sam's Roundtable. I thought it was a really great show, and also subsequently what you did with Baller's Voice and the Hoots Roundtable. I had some of my own observations, and when I was watching yours, you discussed things that I hadn't thought about. But and I was wondering maybe from you having watched both and had time to think, was that you did cover quite a lot of topics. I oh, that as well, but only from what you guys were saying.
Um, to be honest, we spoke about quite a lot. I haven't actually watched the final edit back because I've been quite busy the last couple of weeks. But I'm sure I think the majority of what we spoke about was put out. But when I listen to the roundtable, my obviously I have personal opinions on certain things that I didn't voice publicly. But my main thing was this discussion about players who aren't top tier players, whether they should go to America or or stay in the UK and play for BBL teams. And I was quite hard on my stance that if we're being honest with ourselves, I don't think the BBL has the development pathway that to compete with America, even for players who are D2 level, JUCO level. I went to the States when I was 18, and in the 1 year I went there, I got considerably better. Who's to say that a kid who goes to the right program won't get even better than I was. You know, I just think I think one of my gripes with British basketball is that there's a sense of lack of self awareness with where British basketball sits in the ecosystem of basketball. Something I said in the episode, and that's not to say the BBL teams aren't trying or aren't doing their bit, but we have to keep it real. If the sport's gonna grow, if we're gonna get to a position where young players are turning down America to stay in England, we have to understand where we're at now. And, I've always said it like, going to America, whether you're a standout player, whether you're, end of the bench, one thing America has that England just doesn't have is access to facilities. And, you ask a lot of players, if a lot of older players, if you had the access to play basketball pretty much 24 hours a day, as you do in America, not have to pay £40 an hour to book a sports hall, how much better do you think you would have become? And just off the fact that you have that access to courts, I'm not saying everybody that goes to America is going to become a standout player, but just being able to access what's in America, even at Division 3 level, like, is worth going there for your development. Because at the end of the day, if you're good enough, the BBL is not going anywhere. The opportunities you have as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, you'll more than likely have as a 22-year-old with 4 years of college basketball under your belt.
Yeah, I agree. Because initially, when I watched that video, I totally get what the guys said around table, how maybe the middle guys is a racist opportunity. But then I totally agree with what you guys said, and I think you can agree with both. And I kind of thought, well, like what you seem to, does it? They're not looking to recruit the English youngsters, the ones maybe they aren't the ones for them, like you said, no, they play the system. But I was just trying to think, like, at 6, 17, 18-year-old going to America for 4 years, surely he's more likely at the end to be a prospect than he was before. Know what we know, but they're not going to recruit you at 18, maybe at 22. He's had at facilities, like you said, the coaching, playing against high level opposition, and I thought it was really interesting. So I thought you could agree with both, and definitely what you say, using that opportunity to better yourself, having the access to facilities. And if you want to add to that bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest message to young players going to America is go to the right program. I think a lot of Vince made some good points about guys, going to America and not getting any better when they come back, not being any better when they come back, or he said getting worse. And I think you see a lot of instances where guys go to America and end up transferring from their school after 1 year or 2 years. And that's usually down to either fit or the coach getting fired. So I think from my advice to young players is, I'm always going to advocate to go to America if you've got the opportunity to. But do your research. You need to, I think, have the conversation with a coach who knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about. Like, if you're a half court player, there's no point going to a school where their style of play is playing 100 miles an hour. You're not gonna. It's not your style of play. If you're a calm, poised guard who likes the ball in your hands, you're not really gonna go to a school that plays. You know what I mean? That high tempo, likes to shoot a lot of shots. That's where players come into problems. It's not really going to America; it's going to the wrong programs. Because all in all, you can get runs in America like that are just as good in terms of standard as Division One NBL games. You can get some runs in the summer that are that good. When I was in the States at prep school. I played. I remember in the summer I was scrimmaging against guys who had committed to big D1 schools, scrimmaging against them, week in, week out, and just playing against that level, it helped me a lot, in the off season. And so, like I said, man, I'll always be an advocate for going to America, unless if your aspiration is to play in the BBL for your whole career, then, and some people's that might be their ceiling. There's no, what I mean, maybe stay in the country, but you've got to look at it like, what do you want from basketball? If you want to make as much money as you can, maybe playing in the BBL won't be on your horizon. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's my take on that.
And definitely, I keep hearing that. No, go to your place, know your place in the ecosystem. Who do you think this role is it to those youngsters where their opportunity is? Because I don't think, from what I hear, they always have the players' best interests at heart. If a university are looking to, say, resend X amount off to America or X amount off to Spain, this lies with to the field. Actually, maybe going to that D3 college is not going to be a great opportunity for you. You should go here. Or is it just lies for the player to find that right fit, do you think?
I guess there's some responsibility on the coach. I think the problem is in England, a lot of coaches don't have any experience of America. All they know is, conversations they've had or what they've seen on TV. A lot of coaches have never actually been to America. A lot of coaches don't know the difference in styles between the East Coast and the West Coast, and down south in America. These are the things, you like, I know because I went to America 2 summers in a row, then went to prep school. I've been fortunate to have played all across the East Coast when I was in America. So, things like that and understanding, playing styles of teams, and, coaches' philosophies, having conversations with coaches when you're being recruited and, knowing what to look out for. Because sometimes, like I said, you be in an instance where you're recruited by a coach, but, a little bit of research will show you that they've already got 2 point guards committed and you're going to be the third point guard. That, for example, that could tell you that, the coach is planning to play you in your senior year. He's got a 4-star recruit coming in from where, God knows where, or he's got a JUCO recruit. You've got to understand, what you're getting yourself into. Are you going to go and are you happy with coming off the bench for your first couple of years and maybe starting in your junior year? There are players in the NBA who didn't play a lot in their first year, ended up becoming starters in the latter stages of their career. So I think that's part of play. The onus is predominantly on players. Because you got to do your research. This is somewhere you're potentially committing 4 years of your life to, and is going to be pivotal on how your pro career goes, if you intend on playing after. So there's definitely a lot of onus on the players. And I think with the internet, with YouTube, with everything, there's a lot of avenues to do research. But again, coaches need to look at themselves in the mirror and say, am I advising this kid correctly? Am I telling him to go to a school that doesn't suit his style of play? Am I telling him he's a D1 player when really he's a D3 player, or vice versa, And players also, like Tosin, and shout out to Tosin and Justin, man, but they made a really good point about, knowing where you are and being aware of your ability,
Definitely, I'm big fan of guys, what you guys are doing, what all the voice do, as many, well as many others. And I think especially, I kind of want to move from that video in a second, but one thing I think Ishmael was saying that is sort of like knowing the leads well, because for me as a fan, I've learned a lot from listening to you guys talk about it. A lot of it makes sense, so you to easily research a reasonably good fit, but then often the lead standard is different over there. So that we're saying, oh, you don't want to go to X league because it's not good. What are some of the leagues that you think that are really competitive out there, maybe compared to something maybe if there's a 15-year-old watching video, or maybe that lead to see what the standard's like?
Are you talking about college?
Yeah, college,
College
yeah.
basketball?
Like the
So
NCAA,
with,
you have to carry on.
yeah. So with college, it's weird because traditionally, it's high. There's in Division One, there's three sort of tiers. There's high major, which is what you call your Power Six conferences, which is like the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Big East. I forget the other two, but those are traditionally, you're playing, nationally ranked schedules. Your teams in your conference will be nationally ranked. Go into the tournament. Those are teams like Villanova, Duke, UNC, Kentucky. Those massive names. So and then there's your sort of mid majors, which are like the schools that will have one or two, maybe one or two studs, but a lot of good players. Um, when they're sort of middle of the pack. So teams like Butler, Davidson, those sort of Horizon League, like those sort of middle of the pack teams, and then you'll get your small teams, or some people call them your low major teams, which is like your Ivy League, your Summit League teams, which are traditionally smaller in terms of size. You'll get centers that are like 6'8". Not as big and strong as maybe the high major players, but still, nevertheless, a really good level, which will be in standard, from what I've seen, like very close to like the top end of D2. So I think, some players, I think in the UK, we get a lot of guys going to low major, mid major programs. Occasionally we get a few guys. You get guys like Bodrin, who went to Iowa, a massive school. We get a few players who go to massive schools, but yeah, I think that's from D1. That's like the difference. If anybody who watches the tournament, I watch the tournament every year. You always get those Cinderella teams in like the mid majors. Butler was that for years, where they're playing not the strongest conference, but you put them up against the big boys and they're winning. They're winning. And Butler, I think, ended up going to 2 Final Fours in consecutive years. So in terms of like the standard, the thing with college basketball is there's so much film on YouTube. You can watch the styles, you can watch the differences in plays, you can watch, and that's what I advise all young players to do, man. Don't just watch college basketball as a fan. Watch it as a student. Understand the differences between when the big schools play the small schools. When the small schools beat the big schools, like what is it that they're successful? Players who are in the small schools, you often also see a lot of undersized players, which is a similar theme in D2 as well. You get a lot of guys who are really good but just small. I've seen in D2, I've seen guys who are 6'5" and playing the 4-5, and then I've seen in D1 guys who are 6'5" playing the 1 and the 1 and the 2. So I think also it's also good to understand some of the best players in D2 are undersized. What is that makes them successful and why they're able to use their ability and use their physical attributes and their skill, how they're able to be successful. So
For sure, and let's say credit for you guys talking about it on today, and also the shows you've done. I'm sure it really helps a lot of those players think about their next step. And like you said, I think if they do their research right, they've got the access. You'd hope they get the development they need. The other day, you posted something that made me laugh, and it was sort of with the coronavirus and finding somewhere to play basketball. I was wondering, have you found a court in London to play yet, or are you travelling to
nah,
France anytime soon?
Nah. Honestly, if I knew somebody in Calais, I'd be out here, man. Like the thing is, because I live next to a school, and the school I usually train at, they're not doing any lettings or any bookings till they've shut their facilities till September, and a lot of pretty much all the schools I've contacted, they've all said no, we're not letting anybody use our courts till September. So and yeah, and the other like leisure centers obviously haven't been opened. The other court I usually use is Oakland's, and where we play our home games for Essex. But obviously because of health and safety regulations, they're not allowed to let anybody on the court at all at the minute. So yeah, in short, no. But I'm still looking, still itching to play.
Oh. I can imagine, and like I've seen the Surrey guys. They've been doing outdoor workouts, and Tom Bonnet taking photos of guys working out. I couldn't actually believe it. Someone put dog pill on the post. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it, man. It's sad,
Ridiculous.
man. It's sad. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a nice outdoor
but
court as well. So
for sure. And I think with situation these events are not open. A lot later. I'm not sure if you've heard anything. I know Barcelona did a webinar that was useful. I think it's now like November, January is when they don't restart. Is that what you're hearing?
yeah, I've heard the same thing in November, January. I'm not sure which one I'd prefer, to be honest. It's weird because I was saying to my girlfriend, like, this is the first time since I was 12 that I haven't played basketball in September, October. If the season starts in November, because I've literally played every season, yeah, since I was about 12 years old. 13, sorry, not 12,
Yeah.
13. So it's gonna be weird, being in September and not having games, like. So
I know. Fingers crossed it happens soon. I know it's sort of gone away from the point of video to sort of promote your shows to bridge the divide between players and the fans, and obviously play South. You get some really good insights. Obviously, you know the players because you play against them. What are some of the things you've learned from doing you're surprised to sort of learn some information the players told you, like, oh wow, I didn't know that.
well, I've learned a lot, man. Like, I've learned a lot. You know, when I look at my list of guests, there's guys on there that I've known, like Joel Henry. I've known Joel Henry since before I played basketball, since I was like 11, 12 years old. Um, Temi, I've known her for years, like, and I was learning stuff about them, like Joel, I've learned about his like the regime, his regime, like, and his training program for when he for his dunking, which was really interesting um, to learn about the business side of dunking and how he went plant-based, to a plant-based diet to improve his performance. And this is a guy I've known, like I said, for years. And obviously Zaire Taylor, I've heard a lot of stuff about him. I've heard a lot of stories about him and stuff, and it was good to get him on. To him to tell us about his journey. It was funny learning that he played center in high school. Um, that was really interesting, and he made the transition from being a five in high school to being a point guard in college and for his career. So yeah, I learned a lot, man. I learned a lot. I think everybody who I got on has an interesting story in one way or another. So it was good to get everybody's. It was good to get everybody that I got on the podcast, and I think I got a lot out of the people I interviewed. Um,
Definitely, man. I've not seen all of them, most of them. Like you say, you get a lot out of them. Um, I didn't know anything about the dressing down story, so yeah, so it's interesting to hear a bit about that. And all the others seem really interesting too. Um, was there some like out of the guys you've done so far? Um, whose story surprised you the most? Sort of who do it? Wow, that was a lot there, but you didn't know about.
um, whose story surprised me the most? Um, I don't know who surprised me the most. Um, yeah, I'm not sure because nobody's story I'd say surprised me because I kind of knew I knew a little bit about everybody. You know, some more than others. I think actually, you know what? Do you know what surprised me most? Probably Kofi is the amount of times he hurt his hip. That was probably the most surprising, story or part from the podcast. But otherwise, I nothing was really like, oh my god, like that was probably the most surprising thing for me personally. I think for my viewers or for my listeners, I think Jeremy's reasons for turning down GB might have been was a massive talking point. Um, that was surprising for a lot of people. I think his openness was quite surprising too. You know, he said quite he was very very open with his criticism of GB, which is surprising for a 17-year-old. But then again, you know, it might not be surprising because of the way GB basketball's been ran and been criticized over the years. But like, you know, I find it very surprising that GB spends a month preparing for European Championships. You know, that's absolutely crazy. And the fact that they couldn't get Jeremy on the GB team for whatever reason is even crazier. But yeah, I don't know about I don't know if I think Josh's his tennis career was quite was
Tennis,
interesting
yeah.
to learn about his how he came back to basketball and I thought it was really cool, learning about the tennis circuit and the fact that he, was faced with the decision of whether to go pro or to, take the college route, and how he actually ended up playing for Loughborough and Leicester by accident, really. That was quite interesting as well. But yeah, man, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Josh's story is quite unique in the sense about being a dual sport athlete and being professional both, because he was sort of playing on the pro circuit for tennis with the likes of some of the upcoming Brit guys, and like you said about him, by chance playing for left for basketball because he was, I think he was playing tennis at Derby, wasn't it? So that was
Yeah, so
quite
he
spotty
was
how
playing.
Coach Sham spotted him. Carry on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say. So he was playing. Obviously, he was playing tennis at Loughborough, and then playing basketball at Derby, and then Mark Jerram didn't even know he was at the university for half the season, which is funny, and then ends up making a move. Like I said on that episode, anybody who remembers that season, it was Derby and Northumbria first half of the season. I think Derby were even on top of the league that year. At the beginning of the season, Josh was on a tear. Josh Rima were literally, and the young guys they had there were literally on a tear. I think could have won the league that year if they both stayed. Who knows? But yeah, that was very interesting.
For sure. I've really enjoyed when you sort of got into more depth about the league. And you, obviously, that episode you did, and you had Mark's do tour. That was really insightful episode. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't watched it. But maybe talk a bit more about that season. That has come up a few times that season. What are your memories? You said that Derby team was strong and Northumbria was strong. And obviously, you got your Northumbria shirt on there.
Yeah, so
And
so that was the season after I left Northumbria. That was my first season at Hemel. But yeah, that was a for me that was a very tough season, man. Like individually, like I nearly quit basketball that year, just because of personal reasons, and my time at Hemel. But yeah, it was my first season back home after 4 years of playing and studying at Newcastle. Um, and yeah, it was not a Northumbria team were really really strong that year. They had Teo Yafusi, they had Simon Stewart, Lewis Champion, Blaine Freckleton, Tom Devitt, Jack Wilson, and they added Malcolm Smith. They were really really strong that year, well coached. I actually had my best game of the season up there when we played them. Um, so yeah, that was a really interesting season. And then obviously Derby, Derby they started really well. You know, I never got to play them. I don't think that year, but you know, I watched their game against Northumbria in the big. I think it was the beginning half of the season, and you know they wiped the floor of Northumbria. Like, and Josh was unbelievable. I remember watching. I spoke to Teo after the game, and then you know he was just like, "Yo, like this Josh was you know was balling." So you know I thought I watched the game on crossover, and yeah, man, it was an interesting season. You know, it's credit to Northumbria, like they definitely deserved to win the league. You know, looking back that year, like they were strong, they were deep as well. They were like 10, 11 deep. One of the best defensive teams, you know, in recent years. Like credit to Mark and what Mark does up there. But yeah, it was a really interesting season that year.
Of course. And a quick rest in peace, the crossover. I know the Leeds abandoned it for a bit,
Yeah.
haven't they? So I don't know what's going to happen for next season. What are your thoughts on that?
So from my understanding, Huddle has bought crossover. So Hardware, they essentially do the same thing as crossover, but for other sports, I think. So crossover's essentially been taken over. So I understand that Huddle will be our new platform going forward, I think. But yeah, that's what happened with there. It wasn't like they've got rid of it. It was just they got bought by
No,
someone else, which happens.
I know. And I think quite a few clubs having troubles keeping their footage from last season. So I'm hoping they're to find the footage. So BBL fit to try and do some stuff with the highlight videos and see some difficulties. Um, Obviously, March Studios been one of the biggest news in off-season in Teesside Lions. She obviously had on the show. What are you expecting from them for in D3? Obviously, do you think he will stick to his philosophy? Or also, do you think he'll steal any NBL D1 players with him?
Good question. Yeah, in short, I think he'll stick to his philosophy. You know, that's a sign of a good coach. You know, I expect Mark I expect them to be a Mark Stewart team next year. You know, a team that plays together, a team that plays hard, a team that focuses on the defensive end first, second, and third. You know, in terms of signings, you know, if I'm being honest, I don't know who's available. I don't know who still plays in that area. You know, I presume, you know, some of his guys that played for Northumbria will sign. Other than that, I have no idea who he'll get. But, you know, I have confidence in him as a coach. I think, you know, T's side will win their league for sure. Just off the fact that he is that good of a coach that he will be able to get, you know, he'll make whatever team he's faced, whatever team he has come, you know, to start the season, he'll make that team better than it is because he's that good of a coach. So I expect him to do, you know, to whatever he puts on the floor to, you know, be competitive. But yeah, I'm definitely going to follow, you know, their journey, and I'll be interested to see how they do in their first season with him as the coach.
Very true. I was only asked a signing question to see it was on the, I think it was Newcastle Eagles fan Instagram page, and they were like messaging questions, and I cheekily asked to see say any NBL D1 players, and he laughed, and I wasn't sure if that's him joking around or not, but either way, I was like, yeah, I think NBL D3 is on alert even before that. So, um,
Yeah.
obviously, you got Tim on the show. Are there any other coaches you want to try and get on for season two? What sort of things can you tell us about season two? But
Uh, I have a provisional list. On that
mhm.
list is a coach. Um, there was one coach that I tried to get for season one that I'm going to try again to get for season two. But otherwise, you know, I'm looking at, you know, how, you know, at the minute I'm sort of looking at the numbers, looking at the responses, looking at the feedback from each episode, and sort of going to tailor my guests into where I think the interest lies, for the most part. But then also introduce, you know, I've got, you know, also got this is an exclusive, but I've also got like some mini sods coming out between now and season two, which will be shorter interviews, and you know, conversations based, maybe not so much focused on the journey of the athlete, but you know, some conversations around the NBA, around, you know, basketball topics like that. You know, it's going to be more of like a you know, still an interview, but more towards the conversation side of things. But yeah, no, I've got my draft list for season 2 already.
Awesome. I'll be looking forward to see who you get on and picked. I like what you mentioned there. Like, for me, I feel in terms of like the audience, the interest, I feel people have a sure sense of what their appetite is for British basketball. Do you feel that's the same? Do you feel like, oh, you just sort of guess when you got X guest on, that will get roughly that viewership. If you got Y guest on, that viewership. And what do you think if it's the ladies game or if it's the NBL? What do you think we could do to build that viewership?
So in terms of my viewership, I was actually quite surprised at you know which episodes were more popular than other episodes. I'll say my most popular episode was Jeremy's episode, like by far in terms of first day release, which you know I was surprised just given his age, but then given his sort of his status and where he is and what he's doing at the minute. He's arguably one of the biggest prospects out of this country since probably Ryan Richards or Devin Van Oostrom. So in that respect, I kind of understand. But again, my second highest was probably Zaire. So again, two very different players in terms of where they are in their career. Zaire is very accomplished, had a long career, had a fairly long career to date. Been in and around the BBL, won ton of trophies, MVPs, doing it now in Division 1. So in terms of guests and like viewership, I think I'm still trying to understand where the appetite is, but then I don't want to just I want to give the people what they want, but I want to sort of create demand as well. I don't want to just go to the guys who are hot, and just the popular guys and just have the popular guys. I want to have guys on who people might not know about, but might hear about, or people who aren't that visible in the UK, and sort of give a light to them as well. An example of that is like a Bodrin. Bodrin's, anybody who watches GB or knows about British basketball knows who he is. He's been the most one of a stellar part of the GB team for the last 5-6 years. But he was a relatively under the radar guy when he was in England. It wasn't till he went to Iowa where his people started investing in his journey and stuff. And he's a guy who I've known for years. I used to train with him in the summers, like day in day out. I used to train with him in when we were younger. But he's quite a quiet figure. We don't hear about him a lot. And he's a guy who's playing in one of the biggest leagues in Europe at the minute. He's played in some of the biggest leagues in Europe. So people like that who people who have heard the name but maybe don't hear from them a lot. Those are people again I want to get on and sort of create some buzz around them and have people invested in their journey as well.
For sure, and I definitely get what you're saying. And the reason I asked that question is I remember I think it was your one with Temi, and you were saying about building the brand, and I was wondering whether, for me, I feel like the goal to do these shows well is that you have a player that maybe isn't that though. Like you say, the players you want to build that brand, then they have a better following, more people engage them. What advice do you give to players who want to build a brand? So I think you've got a real good idea on it, and definitely that episode there you were saying some really good points about building a brand for the player.
The biggest thing, I think we're fortunate where we're in an age where social media is, one of the most powerful marketing tools in existence. So, first and foremost is, if you want to build your brand, you need to have a presence on social media, and it's free to have a presence on social media. All you need to do is sign up to an account, but, having a social media account, being active on your social media account, posting content, appearing on shows like this where people can sort of get to know who you are. Because the thing is, and this is one thing from why I did the ISO podcast. It's like a lot of players I know, a lot of the guys I interview, a lot of guys I know off court are really funny, really great, have great personalities, very charismatic. But to the average fan of British basketball, all you know is their stats, all you know is their highlights and stuff. You don't really know them, and I think that's where there's that disconnect, between the fans and the players. Whereas, like, in America, you see like LeBron, everybody feels like they know LeBron. He's so open with his personality and how he is. Like, Kevin Durant, all these big stars. You can get an insight into who they are and what they're like. By their social media, by their appearances on interviews. LeBron does a lot of TikTok with his family, like stuff like that. You have to be visible. People can only be invested in what they see. So that would be my advice, man. Just like, be as visible as you can during the season, especially in the off season as well. Go on shows like this, podcasts, not even just basketball podcasts. You could go on a lifestyle podcast or like and just use that as a medium to interact with people who may not be familiar with you, but yeah, it's all about being visible and getting away from this too cool for school attitude that a lot of basketball players have in this country, that I think is holding them back. It doesn't serve you any purpose being too cool for school. That doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, very true. To say for me, that's why I got into rebound, was to know more about the players, more about the opposition. I feel like in football, even at a comparable level to NBL D1, the average football fan probably know the opposition team, a bit more depth about each player. I mean, for instance, I had no idea, other than the stats, about one of your teammates, Bushman. That was such a great show. He had such great personality, really good talk. As I say, for me, it's good to have him on the show. Just allow next to him, like, oh yeah, I know him. He's a funny guy. And, it builds their brand too. And I think we see with London Lions, where you got Ovi Soka, a guy with a really good brand, how it's beneficial to both teams. And I think maybe the BBL would be more interested in signing these players if they felt they could gain something from it. I know you had Ashley Hamilton on. What sort of advice did he give? Because he's really locked in and focused on building his brand. What advice did he give, or did he mention that show? I haven't watched that one just yet.
Yeah, so me and Ashley we spoke about branding and players being more than just basketball players. And Ashley's quite keen on the entrepreneur side of being a basketball player, which I think is really, really important. And yeah, he just kind of echoed the same sort of sentiment that I said, that Temi said about visibility and engaging with your fans, going on podcasts, and this again. I say it again because I think it's so important. Getting away from this whole too cool for school attitude that a lot of players have. Like at the end of the day, people buy from people. Whether that's tickets, whether that's if you're doing a camp, if you're doing the merchandise, like whatever you need to do, like people have to be invested in you as a person. So, just getting out there, man. It's not complicated. Just get out there, make yourself visible, and be a presence in your community, man. And I think the rest will follow suit.
Definitely, I think for an NBL audience, I think like you mentioned about Cyan, Soshan, probably two players from last season, probably quite big names, but maybe not necessarily big on social media. I know Soshan's a bit more big on Instagram, but on the whole, they're not the most visible on social media. I'm sure they might be saying that. But I guess actually that shows, but there's another side to it too. Like your playing can build your brand too. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, like if you're not good, people don't care. It's that simple. If you're not good, people won't care. Like so, for Jeremy, Jeremy's 17. Like it's different for him than, for example, a guy who's played in the BBL for a few years. Right now he's establishing his credibility as a basketball player in the basketball world. That's where he is at this point in his career. So for him, it's not really about being on social media or being out there. For him right now, it's about working your ass off to get to where you need to get to. What I mean? I think the marketing side of hit for him will be more important when he goes into the pros.
Yeah,
He's fortunate in a position where he's in America at a top 5 school, so he's gonna get a ton of exposure that players even in the best player in the BBL won't even get the level of exposure that he's going to get being a top ranked high school prospect. Because, you know, high school basketball, you're talking about, you know, some tournaments where there'll be thousands of people in attendance. You know, you'll have ESPN, he'll have games on ESPN, the biggest sport network in the world. He'll have, you know, go to college, have games on CBS, ESPN, like, you know. So he's in America. He's in a fortunate position where he doesn't really need to worry about his brand or anything. All he's got to do now is just work on focus on the on court stuff. But, you know, my advice in terms of personal branding and stuff is more towards the guys who are pros already. You know, the guys, especially the guys in the BBL, because let's be honest with ourselves. Like I say, I always talk about where basketball fits in the ecosystem. Where does basketball fit in the ecosystem in terms of the media? You know, it's not football, it's not cricket, it's not rugby, it's not tennis, it's not boxing, it's not rugby league or union, it's not athletics. You know, it is where it is, isn't it? So
Yeah,
those are the players who really need to focus on, you know, building themselves, and like, not just from a standpoint of just saying everybody knows me, but, you know, like me and Ashley spoke about, you know, it's the entrepreneurial side of being a basketball player. You know, you're a business and a basketball player. So yeah, the playing part's definitely important because, like I said, man, if you're not good, people ain't gonna care.
for,
So
for real. I love your honesty there. And I wanted you to clarify that, because I'm pretty sure that's what you meant, because obviously Saez towards the end, obviously Chermies at the beginning. Like you say, there's different priorities, but like you say, it's the ones in the middle. They're the ones that have got to really work on their brand. Um, are there, because obviously people look up to people in the BBL or the, I know we mentioned Ashley. Are there any other people you think, oh, they do their branding really well, really correctly?
um, who brands really well? I think Kofi does really well.
Yeah, yeah,
I think Kofi does really well. I think Kofi has a big social media presence. He's got a blue tick on Twitter, which helps. But yeah, Kofi does a great job. You know, he combines his, you know, his artwork that he does off court with his basketball. You know, I've seen him do interviews with BBC about both. So I think he does a really good job of, you know, pushing his brand and letting people know who he is. Like, he's very personable on his social media. Like, he does a really, really good job. Um, you know, obviously, you know, OV, he's kind of had what I call the Love Island stimulus package.
yeah.
But I think he's done well to sort of maintain his traction that he built from Love Island. You know, he's still someone that people are very much invested in. You know, outside of basketball, you know, even when he cuts his hair bald, he's still, you know, news on gossip pages and stuff. So, you know what they say, man. No news is, you know, any news is good news, man.
To do
So
this, yeah,
um, yeah, you know, obviously having, you know, I think he's got like 2 million followers helps as well. But again, like,
yeah.
you see a lot of people who go on Love Island and 3 months after, nobody cares about them. Do you know what I mean? So
No, but it's sounds so right to have that duration, doesn't he, to sort of carried on. Sounds
yeah,
over a year ago or so now. So I'm glad
yeah,
you mentioned
yeah.
Kofi, because I've not watched much BBL in person. Obviously, I go to watch NBL games. My first, something I remember when I watched it back, or think about it back, because I went to watch the BBL Cup final. Obviously, that was just Bristol, and all the players sort of around the arena before the game, and there wasn't much buzz. I think Brandon Pill got a bit of buzz from a few fans, want to take photos of him, but so much people wanted to speak to Kofi, and I think, like you said, I think because he builds his brand, it has a lot of effect, positive effect for him. But you know, people want his autograph or photo with them, and that's reciprocal. So I imagine as a player, that must feel quite nice to have people wanting your attention, but also it engages the fans. And I feel engagement is a real sort of almost a swear word, because I don't think there is much engagement. I like what you guys are doing, and in terms of your podcast. What things would you like to see from BBL or clubs to improve the engagement? I'm not sure it's something they do really well for most parts. I know there's a few exceptions, but
Um, you know, I can't speak for every BBL club because I don't know what every BBL club does. But, you know, I think every BBL team, very, very important that they have a massive community outreach. You know, in every aspect. From for example, for a team for like the Lions, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more posters of the players or more adverts with the players around London. I don't. I know. Obviously, London's really big, and it's hard to. I guess to. Well, it's not hard, but expensive to market around the whole city. But it'd be good to see more posters, more billboards with players on, more active advertising around key landmarks. I remember when I was in Newcastle, again, like I was fortunate when I was at uni. I went to a lot of Eagles games, and they if you go to the northeast, everybody's heard of the Eagles. They may not have ever been to an Eagles game, but everybody's heard of them. Like I'll be on nights out and I'll say, I play basketball. They'll be like, "Oh, do you play for the Eagles?" Like it's like everybody knows who they are. And you go to the McDonald's in the city centre, you see a poster of Darius or a poster of Fab. Like their presence is very very much in the city and in the surrounding towns. So I think I'd like to see more money being spent on marketing the players as well as the club itself. Particularly your stars. You need to sell your stars. Like what I mean, basketball is a star-driven sport. There's no two ways about it. Like it's driven by its stars, and I think that's where I think British basketball is um, not not a failure, but that's where I think it's that's definitely a weakness in the sport is we don't have enough stars. And we mentioned Ovi, like he's a case study of what happens when you have a star in your league. I think every game the Lions played pretty much sold out this year just because he was there. Like albeit in different circumstances, but I think they need to get on board and start and create stars. And work out how to market your key players in your team. Whether that's in the schools, whether that's in community, whether that's in working with charities, whether that's putting posters around the town. Like you have to, identify who your best players are and just push them.
For sure. I always hark on about the AV effect. So I remember it quite visibly. I think there was two GB games on in a short space of time. Ovi was sat in the fans one game. Ovi wasn't advertised one game. And the two separate games, you could tell which one had Ovi in the crowd and which one didn't, because it was just buzzing. Both ends looked packed at Manchester. So I really hope they do that. I've seen a few clubs they do, like you say, like the billboards, and that must help because I think often like stuff like with YouTube, that's good for the existing market because you don't tend to sort of browse YouTube. You go on a link to watch a game, which I understand the things about, but I think something like going to billboards or communities, that's reaching a new audience. I'm surprised that's not a priority, but I imagine that's the funding. Because say it seems quite obviously we all know there's lack of funding, but what
Yeah.
some of those things you mentioned, I think they should be doing because they don't cost money. Like you say, don't straw shouldn't really cost anything really. What are your thoughts about it? Because I
Yeah.
think they need a bit more use the funding better.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because I have all these ideas, but then I don't know what the financial situation of a club is. So I've not been a GM, so I can't throw things out. I try to think of things that I think aren't that expensive. Marketing isn't cheap. It's not cheap by any means. If you really want to push your brand, but at the end of the day, it's an investment. You've got to put money into it, and I think we're fortunate in a like I said, like in an era where social media is probably the most powerful platform out there. So I definitely hope all the clubs are spending a considerable amount of their marketing budget on social media. You know, marketing their players as their adverts. Like any team does. Man United does it with Pogba, with Rashford, with all these key players. Um, One thing I would like to see, it's kind of maybe a little bit off topic, but is I would encourage, particularly our British players playing abroad, is do a vlog. Do a
Yeah,
vlog of your experiences. I think because I can't lie, I'd be interested. If one of the players did a vlog of playing in Turkey or playing in Spain or of some kind. Just talking about their experience. Today we played, I don't know, today we played Real Madrid, just do like a vlog, of your time, because that's another, I think, untapped area in basketball where, you can kind of showcase your life, your personality and stuff. And, it's not a vlog, but, you see how people are invested in, the journey of basketball players. Like if you look at, Ball in the Family, stuff like that, people were very interested in when the young two went to Lithuania, and stuff like that. So, I'm not saying you're going to become a vlog star overnight, but I think that's a great way to, grow your fan base, keep people in touch with what you're doing. And I would hope that, the federation and the governing body will get behind it and push it as well. But I'd like to see, some players do get into, vlogging, as an overseas pro, if anybody out there, wants to needs some editing or some whatever, like some direction or anything, give me a shout. I'm happy to help. But yeah, I'd definitely advise players to get into like vlogging and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'd see benefits from it because they're out abroad. That it's their livelihood, isn't it? It's sort of like professional development, sort of just like saying, "Hey, I'm here. Don't forget about me." To say BBL might develop to a place where they want to go, and if they have that British audience, they use that to get a better contract, or even just so, but like it helps their agent a bit find the next career. Saying this is what I'm doing. And also, I don't think it needs to be that long. It just needs to be like a 45-minute chat. It could just be like a little 5 minutes here and there. And I know
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, but you're looking at doing like mini episodes. Because
Yeah.
I've been like researching more into it. Do you think there's a lot more power in doing the mini ones rather than, let's say, a full blowout video?
Yeah, I think for convenience, I was thinking, maybe that was why Jeremy's was so popular because it was only half an hour. But in that half an hour, we got quite a lot. But the mini-sodes are just, for players who I want to, put a spotlight on, that maybe not that they're not worthy of a full episode, but maybe there's more power in giving them a shorter episode where people can kind of get to it and then that's it, and then maybe have a wider conversation about something else. So like my ideal format is to be, spend 50, no more than 15 minutes talking about them and their journey, 15 minutes talking about, the NBA or a hot topic in basketball, and just have just a relaxed conversation and let them kind of, showcase their personality and stuff. One episode I've got coming up is with two players who played with each other. One is just signed a pro contract. The other no longer plays basketball anymore. So the dynamic of that one will be quite interesting. I won't say their names, but that we're hoping to record that, I think, in the next week or so. And then when the other one, I won't even say yet, but that one's going to be very, very interesting.
Awesome.
So
I I definitely think there is more scope to have those shorter conversations where you, like you say, talk about a hot topic. I know sometimes if I listen on Instagram, maybe I wouldn't listen as long as if I was listening on YouTube, because you sort of got to stay on that page, you watch it on your phone, or if, like you say, if you've got 15, 30 minutes, you might just want to watch something short rather than a long video. So I really look forward to these little mini videos. I think they'd be really good, and like you say, like a hot take. Because I think with British basketball, we've got such broad interest. You have people who are interested in NBA, people who are interested in BBL, people interested in NBL, grassroots. Is there like people you're sort of targeted for those, or is it sort of players similar CVs to what you had before? Or is it grassroots, or is it NBL or BBL, or like you say pro? Is it like a varied audience, or not? Sorry, varied player, or just within sort of CV of what you've had?
Yeah, I think it will be mostly, people I know personally and who maybe don't have the extensive journey or extensive career to have a full episode on. And just people who, maybe have had interesting careers, but maybe quit the sport quite young, or, are fairly young in their career. So those are the kind of people I have for my mini-sode, I think. And obviously save the people with like a longer journey, a longer story for the full episodes.
I say it sounds a really good concept, and I really enjoyed listening to what you're doing. Watched most of us, few I've got to catch up on, and I know there's a few of you guys who players doing these interviews, and I think it's really great putting back to the community. My not worry, there's more worry because I won't be able to watch them. Is that when the season starts, when it does, it's going to be really hard for you guys to sort of fit it all in. So I know you worked hard. Have you sort of thought about that for next season? Just to say, I imagine there'll be quite a lot of work trying to keep it all up and still play basketball.
Yeah, and obviously I work full time as well. I've actually just got a new job. I start at the end of the month,
Oh,
so
congrats.
time. Thank you, thank you. So time's obviously going to be very precious, particularly when the season starts. But if there's one thing about me, I get stuff done. I'll find a way to get season 2 done, probably before the season starts. Um, sometimes I don't know if anybody could tell, but for season 1, some episodes are recorded, back to back to back. Some episodes are recorded 2 in one
Wow.
day. So I think I recorded everything in a space of about 5 weeks, and then just edited it the sort of the week before it came out. So I'll probably use that same format. I'll probably spend a few weeks just recording everything, get everything on my hard drive, and get it all out. Also, this is exclusive news. I'm actually moving the ISO podcast onto the Baller's Voice. Me and Tosin have,
Nice. Yeah.
agreed like a little informal partnership, whereby he'll now take control of the editing side and pushing the podcast on his channel, and it'll be part of the Baller's Voice. So I'm really excited to get so the mini-sodes in season 2 will be on the Baller's Voice. It'll still be on my Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube channels, but it will now be a product of
Fair.
the Baller's Voice.
Nice. Are you getting yourself a sponsorship deal as well on your Essex training gear?
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know if they can afford it. No.
You have to ask them. It depends where they end up next season, I guess. But I was to ask that because I have seen that you've done a few videos with them. I've really enjoyed them, and I kind of want to cover it before we go. The draft day one, I thought it was a really great concept. Talk us through that because I hope everyone's seen it because I think it's one of the best things to come out this off season. But talk us through it.
Yeah. So me and obviously I've known Tosin and Justin since I was started probably since I was about 15, 16. Me and Tosin talk a lot behind the scenes about just British basketball in general. We bounce ideas off each other a lot. So I think it was inevitable that I was going to go on the episode, and he approached me with this idea of the draft. So yeah, no, it was a really fun episode. I think I ended up picking Prince, Cameron, Ricardo, Salks, Travis, and Malcolm as my 5. I picked a team on that on the floor would be I felt would be the best team of the 3 teams picked. I picked Prince. Obviously, Prince is my boy. Me and him started this basketball journey together. And not just because he's my boy, but I genuinely think he's the best British point guard in Division 1. I think he possesses playmaking ability that no other point guard in Division 1 has. So I think he was a no-brainer. I think Cameron, again, him and Jeremy, the most exciting prospects I've seen from the country. Cameron's got a bright future ahead of him. A guy can get your bucket anyhow, any place. So he was a no-brainer. A lot of people are surprised with Salks. I'm a big fan of Salks, man. I've played against Salks every year since I've been in Division 1. And he's just he's a workhorse, man. Like, he's one of the best open court players in the league. He's got an eye for a fast break, and I think he's a competitor. He's a ferocious competitor. Then obviously Malcolm Smith, don't need to say much. Former MVP. Just a bucket. Big, strong, 6'6", built like a tank. He's can guard. 1 to 5. A lot of people don't know, but can defend really well. And then Travis, again, not much need to be said. I think Travis is definitely one of the best players I've seen in Division One. He's definitely, I'd say him, Malcolm, and probably Ellis Cooper are probably the best 3 players maybe I've seen in Division One. So I definitely had to pick Travis, man. Big fan of his game. Great guy. So yeah.
For sure, I really enjoyed that episode. It really got me thinking. I want to ask you this question because it was kind of you say about Richard Salts and the qualities he has, but it's inspired me to sort of ask this question many deaths since that show. It's like, if you had to pick maybe 2 or 3 underrated players from the NBL, but people may not think about, like the way how you
Yeah.
say about Richard Salts, maybe people haven't. Who would you say they are, and what skills do you think they have that maybe people don't realise?
Underrated players in the league
Yeah,
in Division One, I would say Salks is definitely one. Salks, again, like I said, workhorse, an absolute terror in the open court. Very underrated player. I'll say Brendan Okoronkwo, maybe another one. I think Brendan this year, was a massive part of Solent's success, but I think his contributions go under the radar because some people, you might say he's not the most talented of that starting 5, but he's a guy who would start on every team in this league. And I think what Brendan does and what he brings is unmatched. In terms of his grit. He's very unselfish. He can score, he can defend. He's athletic. I've got a lot of time for Brendan. And I think he's definitely in that. It's hard to it's easy to miss his contributions to Solent because of playing with Ian, playing with Elliot Dads, playing with Travis, playing with Elliot Sentence. But yeah, Brendan I think is definitely another underrated player. And then third, who would I say is underrated? That's quite a hard one, That's quite a hard one. Don't know really, to be honest. I don't know. I think that's can't really think of anyone else, to be honest.
that's all right. I
I'll
say
tell you.
I think Brent.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
who I think is an underrated coach in Division One. Derby's coach, Matt Shaw.
not sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he's very underrated. I have a lot of respect for him because he year on year, if you look at his teams on paper, they never look. If I'm being honest, they never look that great. He usually has a couple of seniors and the rest of the players are EABL players, but he has them playing a style of basketball that wins them games. And I always say, man, a testament of a good coach will, like an all right coach will make a good team good. But I think an exceptional coach will make an all right team really good or a good team great. And I think he definitely his results and what he does for how he coaches that team is definitely makes them better than they are. So and that's no disrespect to the players. They've got good players on that team, but I definitely think he's proved year on year that he doesn't need much to be competitive, and I respect that a lot. I respect that a lot because it's easy to win if you've
yeah,
got the best team on paper. So
I agree. I feel like Derby see this end. See, I'm obviously not a player to have the insight in terms of the tactical nuances, but for me, they really impressed me. They were really hard to beat. I think they lost like 3 times in 2020 and they're against best teams. Do you think they'll back that up next season? Obviously, as EOBL players, they're coached by him at junior level, but at senior level. That must obviously help. Do you think they'll get better next season?
I mean, they've got Malcolm coming back, so they're going to be competitive. again, like, you know, a stud like that and a great coach, I think you're always going to be tough to beat. So I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if they're back in the running, you know, for top four, top six next year.
For sure. I say it's great having you on. So many exclusives. Thank you for sharing. As I'm sure
It's all right.
you're really looking forward to season 2. I thought maybe to finish it on, sort of giving you advice to maybe other podcast shows, or people think, oh, I want to do this, or the players you talk about doing the vlogs. What advice would you give to
Yeah.
them?
Just be consistent, man. You know, like I said, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and all my podcasts I listen to, you know, they're very consistent in their quality, they're consistent in their release dates. You know, I'm quite an organized person anyway, like by nature. So I had a schedule where, you know, I released the preview on Monday, dropped the episode Thursday, edited Friday to Sunday. You know, I always made sure that I never missed any of my, you know, deadlines that I set myself. And, you know, again, like, it's not, I don't make any money from the podcast. I just do it because I love it. You know what I mean? I do it because it's a passion project. Um, so I think, again, like, you know, don't think you're gonna do a podcast and it's gonna generate you loads of money through ads and stuff. But, you know, I think just understand, you know, who your audience is, why you're doing it, you know, and just stick with it, man. Push it, man. I think it's good for a lot of people, you know, getting that experience. Like for me, you know, I've never been that comfortable, like public speaking. That was always something I hated doing. But, you know, from doing the podcast, I'm so comfortable just talking, you know, in public and just speaking because, you know, it's helped that. But yeah, I think my main advice is just be consistent and put the time in, man.
For sure, I definitely emphasise that. And I think you touched really good thing. For me, it's been more organised and definitely more confident speaking in public. And I've really enjoyed the process. I think for anyone out there who's thinking, oh, should I do it? I'd say definitely give it a go. If you like it, obviously, like you say, be consistent, know your market, be organised, and be willing to put the work out there. It's quite hard work. But like you say, we don't really get paid to do this. It's a joy, a passion, and enjoy it essentially. Um, so thank you for coming on, and good luck for your new job. And I look forward to series 2. Um, Anything you want to say to any of your listeners before you go?
Yeah, and just again, you know, thank you for all my listeners, everyone who's looked in to the podcast. You know, thanks to my guests as well. You know, I've had, for guys who don't know, you know, I've had Kofi Josephs, Temi Fagbenle, Bodrin Olaseni, Zaire Taylor, Mark Stootle, Ramon Fletcher, Joel Henry, Ashley Hamilton, Jeremy Sohan. There's somebody I'm forgetting. Josh Ward Hibbert.
That's it.
So, you know, so I've had a range of guests, a lot of insight. So yeah, give it a listen. On Twitter, if you just search the ISO podcast, on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, but I won't be doing SoundCloud for season 2. YouTube, all my content's there. I've got like segments as well on YouTube. So if you just want to listen to a bit of it, there's like 5-10 minute segments on like bits I think were really interested in the podcast. But yeah, thanks to everyone who's been listening and stuff, and my guests and everything as well.
Awesome.
And thanks to
Say
you,
definitely
Chris, as well, man.
Oh, thank you, man. And I say thanks to you for coming on. I've really enjoyed your shows. A few I've got to catch up with, but definitely one of my
Yeah.
highlights. Lockdown, listen to your shows, some great advice, and I'm definitely learning off you guys who sort of been there and done it. So everyone, take care, stay safe, and that's goodbye from me and Chuck. And have a lovely evening.
Cheers, Chris.